on the computer.
Mhm.
All right, there we go. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and share. All right, I'm going to go up here and go to slideshow. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay.
Can you still hear me, Selena?
Yes, I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, cool. Yep, go ahead.
Right, great. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, Jeff, for the very kind introduction. I'm going to talk to you tonight, about how to win on the ACT and SAT, specifically 10 ideas that you haven't considered. I'm sorry, one moment. Oh, there we go. Okay, I just have to click. All right, just a little bit of background about myself. I've been an SAT and ACT tutor since early 2013. I started with a large test prep firm and then went independent in mid-2016. I've been tutoring independently in Westchester and Lower Fairfield counties primarily. I tutor both sections of both the SAT and the ACT, and I have earned 99 percentile scores on both of the tests. Professionally speaking, I'm a scientist by training, specifically organic chemistry at the graduate level. I have experience in pharmaceutical research and development, SAT content development back when the College Board was overhauling the SAT just around March 2016. And as of late, I've been engaging in biopharmaceutical intelligence analysis. It sounds a lot sexier than it really is. If anybody has any bouts of insomnia, come talk to me. I'm happy to give you some of the stuff I have to read on a daily basis. But at any rate, just a couple of quick notes. The ideas to be presented will apply both to the SAT and the ACT. But just in the interest of not making myself say SAT, ACT over and over again, I'll probably just say SAT. But again, I want to emphasize that the ideas presented will apply to both tests. And also, in order to just maintain a good flow of the presentation, I just ask that you hold questions until the end. As Jeff said, you're welcome to put them in the chat box, and I will address them in the formal Q&A at the end of the session. Okay, I'm going to walk everybody through an overview of the ideas that I'm going to get into tonight. First one is how to use the SAT as an asset and not a liability in your college application strategy. I'm going to go through two what I call ugly truths and a lie. We'll talk about how to make life easier for your high schooler during the junior year. Then I'm going to get into another trio. This is a series of risks that could turn the SAT into a time and money pit if you're not careful. We'll discuss why you should have a college list before commencing serious prep for the test. And then we'll finish up with the #1 piece of wisdom that I can provide for SAT greatness. The first idea, how to use the SAT as an asset and not a liability. I'd like to start, if I may, with a story about my own less than ideal SAT experience from high school. When I was in high school, I felt that the SAT was a gigantic waste of time and that it had zero connection to how I would do in college. And bear in mind, this is pre-2005, back in what I call the very dark ages of the SAT, when it was rampant with the Venn diagrams and the esoteric asinine word analogies and the dreaded guessing penalty where you got dinged on every single incorrect answer. Ugh. I'm sure you guys remember those days. And as you can see, I do. I hated it. And I reiterate that I thought the whole exercise was pointless. And yet today I no longer feel that way. In fact, my view of the SAT has taken a complete 180. And I firmly believe that every college-bound high schooler should take the SAT. And at this point, you may be thinking, what? Selena, are you sure you didn't smack your head this morning? Nope, I'm happy to report no head trauma. Let me take you through how I arrived at my new reasoning. So after working with SAT students one-on-one for several years, I began to really brainstorm why the SAT was set up the way it was and why so many colleges still required it. Because my students still tell me, why do I have to take this? It's like a necessary evil. It's so much stress. Why do it? So what I realized is now something that I've been explaining to my private clients, and now something that I'm very excited to share with you all. Because they're called college readiness tests, because they're called college readiness tests, the SAT must be, at least to me, evaluating the skills critical for success in college and beyond. And I know it sounds like a bit of a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many people don't make this connection because the SAT has been vilified. So one of the things that I take my students through is the actual skills that I feel are being tested on the SAT and the ACT. I've always viewed this list of skills as invaluable. My students feel as though their eyes have been opened, and this is the very first time I'm sharing this publicly, and I'm very excited for that. So if you're ready for a fresh take, I'm going to give you a snippet of some examples of the skills that I think are being evaluated on these different sections of the test, specifically in reading, of course, reading, but going a little bit deeper, reading and understanding the key takeaways in unfamiliar text, especially more complex text, which is going to come up in college and career. In addition, how an author constructs and strengthens his or her argument, and comparing and contrasting differing viewpoints is needed as well. In terms of writing/grammar, obviously attention to detail is very important, and the ability to write clearly and concisely. I know I have to do that every day at the day job, as well as, it may seem obvious, but the conventions of written English. And I include this because I'm a little rattled by how many students tell me that they're no longer taught the standard conventions of English. They feel as though it's like, oh, I need a comma here. Ding! Yeah, I just need a pause, so that's why I put the comma there. No, that's not going to win you any points on the SAT. Math is the one that I really enjoy teaching to my students, obviously because I'm a science whiz by training. Sure, in math, you learn about the triangles, the trigonometry, logs, quadratics, what have you, but at the root of it all, math is all about problem solving and thinking creatively and logically. And especially in college and career, you're going to have to do all of that on the fly. And math is an excellent way to evaluate someone's ability to do this. And of course, we round out with science, assessing your abilities as a potential scientist, strengthening and refuting arguments. Can you interpret and extrapolate data, especially when you have multiple data sets in a single infographic or table? Can you draw conclusions based on information given? Can you compare and contrast conflicting viewpoints effectively? You may also be tested on your ability to justify why an experiment was set up the way it was set up. All of these are critical skills for college and beyond. And I love showing my students that this is your opportunity to demonstrate these skills and to show these colleges what you can really do.
Selena, just to clarify again, when you're saying SAT, we're talking about both the SAT and ACT.
That is correct.
Right.
Okay. Next, I'm going to go to part one of the two ugly truths and a lie. Ugly truth number one, I call it the test optional ploy. Many parents and high schoolers swoon over schools that have decided to go test optional. They've dropped their SAT requirements. If you'd like to think that the test optional schools have the student's best interest in mind, right? Well, you might say, well, yeah, of course they do. Colleges that go test optional have leveled the playing field for non-affluent families who can't afford super expensive tutors and test prep classes. You might also say, well, yes, this is a huge step in the right direction because there are many high schoolers who have bad testing anxiety, and this alleviates the stress of them having a big black mark, that is a low SAT score, on their college applications. Well, yes, I agree. The remaining components of your SAT's college applications will shine more brightly without the tarnish of a less than stellar SAT score. And yes, it appears to open doors to schools that otherwise would have been out of reach for your high schooler. But brace yourselves, because I'm about to drop a bomb on all of this praise for the test optional schools. I want you to picture this. A college publicly announces that it's going test optional. This PR stunt triggers a surge in the number of applications because, hey, you don't need to submit your scores. There's no need to be afraid anymore. But here's the catch. The number of acceptances that these applicants are vying for doesn't move. So this results in a lower acceptance rate, making the school look more selective. It's a very sobering reality that you absolutely must consider if you're considering opting out of submitting scores to these schools. And in addition, because students who have low scores are going to opt out of submitting them, that means the only students submitting the scores have scores that are stellar, which leads to an artificial inflation of the school's test score stats, making the school look even more selective. To me, that doesn't really sound like a win for your high schooler. Your high schooler could have an absolutely glowing application without an SAT score, which is great. But when pitted against somebody who, all else identical, did submit solid scores, who do you think is going to snag that acceptance? My money's going to be on the applicant with the solid scores. So again, I therefore ask, with test optional, Who is really the winner? Going forward to the second ugly truth, why you should avoid the big test prep books. Excuse me. Sorry, tickling my throat. Bear with me. Okay.
Take your
You might
time.
think, thanks. You may think that starting with the big test prep provider books like Barron's, Kaplan, Princeton Review is a good idea. Because hey, they've been around for many decades, so they must be good, right? Wrong. Please, please do not fall victim to this mentality. And I'm saying this because I worked for a big test prep firm, as I mentioned before, as a content developer, and I discovered what's really driving them. And chances are good this may not come to mind for many of you. What's really driving them? Timelines. Think about this. That glossy big test prep book for 2020 was likely very rushed due to a project manager's timeline, which was driven by a higher up's desire to be first to market and therefore snatch up all the customers. This tight timeline, unfortunately, means there could be errors in content, errors in formatting, because it's the content developers, the copywriters, everybody's pinched because it's go, go, go. We have a deadline in place imposed by the higher ups. So you might think, okay, well, what do I use instead if I should stay away from this book? For targeted practice, I always recommend going for boutique firms. They tend to be far more meticulous about their content and error checks, and the care that goes into their materials is usually apparent because they're driven by ensuring students do well, not on increasing revenue. I know if I were a parent, I definitely wouldn't want my student, my child, using a book that was driven by a timeline and a desire to bring in more money. Next, the lie. I'm going to walk you through the busting of the myth of the bad test taker. You already know that today's high schoolers are simply remarkable. They've got incredibly demanding course loads, multiple ECs in sports, and more. And they're performing under all this pressure, and they're doing it very well. As a matter of fact, I'm sure your high schoolers are among them, making all of our former high school selves look like complete slackers, my own included. We won't talk about that. But anyway, here's the conundrum. When it comes time for the SAT, once it walks into the room, all of that confidence just vanishes. I wonder, well, why in the world do you do so well on everything else? What's going on here? So here's my thinking. More likely than not, your high schooler simply hasn't been taught how to tackle the test. Let's reason it out. Your high schooler probably wasn't born a track star or a science whiz. I mean, they're not created overnight. It's something that you need to practice, you need to work up to. And fortunately for your high schooler, the SAT is no different. With a solid SAT strategy and sincere efforts and dedication, your high schooler will become an SAT star as well.
Just to clarify for everybody, go back a minute, Selena.
Sure.
When Selena writes multiple EC, she's referring to extracurricular activities.
Yes. Okay. Going on to number 5, how to make life easier during the junior year. Junior year, let's face it, is madness. It is what I call a nut house. We have college research and visits, intensifying sports and extracurriculars, driver's ed, more AP courses, and this little thing we call the SAT. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. So my thinking is, why not lessen some of that madness by starting preparations for the SAT a little bit earlier, say as a sophomore or even a freshman? Now, stay with me. Before you tell me that I've lost my marbles, people have looked at me funny for saying that before. Let's think about this. Aside from select advanced math topics like, your trig and your matrices, there's a very good chance that your high schooler already has the knowledge needed for greatness on the test. So you might be thinking, okay, Selena, this is a great idea, but what do I do about the areas that my high schooler has not learned? Well, fortunately, in the digital age, there is a wealth of information available to us, and it's all a Google search away. And a lot of these resources, including Reddit, there's tons of activity on the SAT and ACT subreddits, and Khan Academy are completely free to use.
So let me make a couple quick points. So
Sure.
Khan Academy has partnered with College Board, right, which runs the SAT. So Khan Academy would work only for the SAT, or would it work for the ACT as well?
That's a great point. Thank you. The Khan Academy has two different components. They have an SAT section, but then they also have a non-SAT section, which has information on any and every topic you could possibly want to learn. So I always recommend my students, regardless of which test they're taking, they can brush up on any knowledge gaps that they have in the non-SAT section of Khan Academy. The videos and the practice are very strong.
And they're all free.
Yes, they're all free. All you need to do is sign up for an account with Khan Academy and you're set.
Now, this is the first time I've actually heard of using Reddit as a tool to prep for the SAT or ACT. How would you even do that?
It's a great question. It's not so much a bona fide prep course or book, but it's an online community, and it's filled with high schoolers who are preparing for the test or they're waiting for their scores. And there's a sense of camaraderie, community there. I've gone in and high schoolers will ask, how is the answer to this question, C or D? Does it do? They often ask each other, what resources do you like to use? What do you recommend? And a lot of high schoolers will post their score progression, and people will ask, what did you do to study? And people are always very, very happy to share their information. And also, if somebody's deciding to prep independently, there are a couple of Reddit feeds in there that have access to previously administered tests.
So it's more of a community, a social networking, as opposed to a tutoring tool.
Yes. Thank you for the clarification. Mm-hmm. All right. So what I was saying is, yes, to Jeff's point, Reddit is indeed a social community, but in addition to the SAT and ACT subreddits, you also have homework help type subreddits. So you can ask a number of people for help with fundamentals, and they can point you to a variety of valuable websites. Okay. Or depending on the goal score that your high schooler has in mind, you may not have to worry about these knowledge gaps at all. You can have what I call a wrong answer allowance. So if you see a trig question, you're not comfortable with trig, okay, don't worry about it. Less stress for the high schooler, less stress for you, everybody wins. I want you to imagine if your child is younger than the junior year, imagine taking the SAT out of that tangle of demands of junior year and nestling it into a much quieter year. Imagine the stress that would alleviate on your high schooler. It is a tremendous weight to be lifted. Now, I'm sure many of you have high schoolers who are already juniors, may be thinking, okay, well, am I late? No, absolutely not. This is still a fantastic time to be starting your preparations. 6 to 8 months from now, maybe not so much. So I applaud you for being here and getting this going now, so that you could be wrapping up or getting close to wrapping up by the summer after junior year. Getting into the trio of pitfalls that can turn the SAT and ACT into a time and money pit. Number one, never simply bulldoze practice tests or practice sets, excuse me. I want you to imagine that you're doing laundry and there's this stubborn spot that's in your favorite shirt and you just can't get it out. You wash it over and over again the same way each time, but the spot will not come out. This cycle, no pun intended, is exactly what happens when a high schooler simply bulldozes through practice questions and practice tests without reflection. You may be asking, okay, well, what is a reflection? Simply put, a reflection is an analysis of a few key items for every incorrect answer in a practice set, whether it's just practice questions, a timed section, or a full-blown practice test. Your high schooler needs to understand why the correct answer is correct and why his or her answer was not. Pardon me. What kind of error blocked your high schooler from getting the correct answer the first time? And most importantly, what to do in the future in order to prevent the same type of error from occurring. I emphasize, reflection is essential for every high schooler who wants to improve his or her test scores. And this is much more, I must emphasize this as well, this is much more than a mere looking at the explanation saying, oh, okay, I understand why it's D. Not even close. I want you to encourage your high schooler to dig deep, truly seek to understand the why behind the correct answer, as well as the why behind the incorrect answer that he or she chose. This must be done for every single question that is missed.
Now,
and one,
Selena,
go ahead.
Really quickly. So that reflection, I would imagine, takes place by using the score report from the exam that you took, right?
Yes, this can be gotten, if you're talking about an official test, the SAT and ACT both offer, essentially, it's a test release. The College Board calls theirs the question and answer service, where you can purchase a copy of the test you took, a copy of the answer key, and a copy of your own answers. It's an invaluable tool, and ACT allows this as well. They call theirs the test information release. But I should note that these are only done for certain testing months.
Well, what I would say though, for anyone on the line who has a child younger than junior year for sure, you know, in our school and most schools in Westchester, the kids are required or it's offered at least to take the PSATs or usually the PSAT around here. And you know, I'm always harping to my kids like, okay, listen, take this seriously because the score report that you're going to get back is going to be a valuable tool for you to use moving forward to see what you're deficient in, what you need to practice, and what you need to go back and reflect on. So if your kid has not taken the PSAT yet, this is you know, it's an invaluable tool to be able to use in order to be able to reflect on your responses.
Absolutely. Yes, this is one of the most valuable things you can get your hands on when preparing. Okay. And one other thing that I wanted to add is that after a few reflections on full practice tests, you're going to start seeing trends. I mean, you may see them right off the bat, but if you keep doing these reflections without corrective action, eventually your high schooler is going to get to the point where, say, he's lost dozens and dozens of points due to careless mistakes. I can pretty much guarantee that at some point your high schooler is going to get super annoyed by losing so many points to something like that, that he or she's going to vow to fix that going forward. So, and how do I know this? Because I recall an instance in college, my second semester of freshman year, when I took a chemistry exam. I thought, oh yeah, I know this material pretty well. Should be okay. I got the exam back. I got an 84. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me go see what I did wrong. So I'm flipping through. It's like, okay, stupid mistake. How did I miss this? I lost 10 points, a full letter grade to careless mistakes. Guess who was much more careful for the rest of the semester? This one. Going to the next potential time and money pit for the SAT. It's what I call chasing the unicorns, tricks, secrets, and hacks. A question that I see a lot on the Reddit feeds is, can you teach me some tricks or hacks for the SAT? And I want to tell you that any test prep provider, whether behemoth or boutique, who promises you anything along the lines of the secrets the test writers don't want you to know, how to hack the test, the best SAT tricks ever, is full of hot air and is going to waste you and your high schoolers' time and money. It's a strong statement, yes, but it is true, and I'll tell you why. The SAT it's not something that you can hack. It doesn't have secrets. There are no tricks, no shortcuts, no other clever ways to get around putting in the work. But I'll tell you what it does have. The SAT has a consistent structure and consistent content that your high schooler can learn and practice. The SAT has a penchant for setting trap answers for unsuspecting students, but these can be avoided with vigilance and consistent practice. The SAT also has the flexibility for students to experiment with different strategies for the different sections and question types, such that high schoolers can build their own specific arsenal of strategies specific to them to help them achieve greatness on the test. So what it all boils down to is that the SAT is not hackable, but it is winnable. And again, the bottom line is the key to winning on the SAT isn't stealing secrets or learning how to hack it or attending to take shortcuts. It's putting in the work to truly understand the ins and outs and consistently practicing, just as you would for any class, sport, or other activity. And then the last potential money pit, time and money pit for the test, 1,600 or bust, or if you're in the ACT camp, 36 or bust. This wild goose chase, I'll be honest with you, is one that I'm still trying to understand a little bit. Absent a very, very forgiving testing curve, the difference between a perfect score and a near perfect score is essentially a crapshoot. So why so many high schoolers waste time and money on something that is dependent on a good amount of luck, particularly when there's probably something much more fun and or productive that could be done, is beyond me. Now, even if your high schooler is gunning for an Ivy school, ask yourself and your high schooler this very important question. Is there something else that I could be doing to strengthen my applications more than a perfect score that is not a crapshoot? And in the majority of cases, the answer to this question is yes. Or even better, tell your high schoolers to forget about college applications and such for a bit and go out and have some fun, because God knows our superstar high schoolers from number 4 sure could use more fun in their lives.
So let me touch base on that real
Go
fast.
ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So this is a really, 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 really important point. All right. If a student gets a 1500 on her SATs or a 34 composite or 35 composite on their ACT, I absolutely 100% advise to pack it in and call it a day and be totally thankful for that score, right? If a kid's applying to a super selective school, a 1500 is you're in the ballpark, right? A 1550 is not going to get you any closer, okay? What is more important at that point, the question over here is Selena saying, think about what you could be, putting your time and effort towards. Those essays and those supplemental essays for those colleges are super important. They're like the most important secondary thing after your academics. So a lot of times we'll have kids who are taking 2, 3, 4 tests one after another to try to get, a 34 or a 35 or a 36. When 2 nights before they're about to do the application, I say to the kid, I said, okay, you're getting ready to apply now. How is everything's totally complete? Cross the T's, dot the I's. Like, oh yeah, I'm done. I just have to finish up my supplemental essay. And I'm blown away by this because that supplemental essay, it could be the breaking point or the thing that puts you in the conversation to get into that super selective school. That supplemental essay for those colleges is the thing they're looking for, that's saying, okay, why out of all the thousands of colleges in the country is this kid choosing to apply to this school? And those responses have got to be really good. So whenever a student gets a really high mark, like a 34 or 35 in the ACT, there's absolutely no reason to go any further than that. Because first of all, the odds of you getting a perfect score at that point are not strong, right? I would imagine, Selena, right? What are the odds of us getting a perfect score from a 34? You already got most of the meat on the bone.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of bandwidth to prepare for that exam a second or third or fourth time. And your time is better spent on other parts of your application at that point.
Absolutely. Okay, and then next I'm going to go to idea number 9, why you should have a college list before commencing serious SAT prep. Up here I have some classic SAT questions, such as, what's considered a good SAT score? Or my scores are this and this. Do you think I should retest? So many high schoolers ask me and Reddit what a quote-unquote good test score is or whether another attempt is warranted. But what they don't realize is that it's essentially impossible to answer this question without at least an idea of the colleges being considered. So what do we mean by this? The surefire way to know what a quote-unquote good score is and whether your high schooler should test again is one magic question. And the one magic question, what is the mid-50 test score range of your favorite schools? So what do we mean by mid-50? Mid-50 is my cutesy name for the 25th percentile score and the 75th percentile score. I just like saying mid-50 because it's easier, it's shorter. It saves me a little bit of time. So I recommend that for your bare minimum goal, at least to start, is the middle of this range, or if your high schooler is feeling more ambitious, start at the 75th percentile mark or higher, because that's definitely going to put you in a very good position. Now, I want to note that even if the target schools are just tentative when you're setting this goal, answering this question will still give your high schooler a goal, a milestone, something to start working toward. It can move out, it can move in, but the point is that the answer to this question, as I said, will give your high schooler a defined score to work toward, so that he or she isn't just testing and testing and testing, going higher and higher and wondering, where's the end? There's no end in sight. It's one less thing for our students to worry about. They have a defined end goal, at least. And again, it's not etched in stone. It can change once you firm up the college list. And when that does happen, once the list and the target score are firmed up, that milestone becomes a finish line. I want to reiterate, this is really, for me, the only true definition of how to determine what a good score is. And to me, anything else is just blowing smoke. And last, I'm going to finish up with the number one piece of wisdom that I give to my students and parents for SAT greatness. Now, to be fair, you've probably already considered this one, but I'm going to give you my take on it. So for that reason, I count it as number 10 anyway. It makes absolutely no difference how other high schoolers are doing. Your high schooler is running his or her own race. And I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate this point. I see many high schoolers on the Reddits, and they see the members of the what I call the Ivy or Bust camp flexing, as they call it, flexing on the test subreddits with their 1500 plus and their 32 plus scores. And the lower scoring onlookers feel bummed at best, and to be frank, like shit at worst. And the reason why I'm telling you this is so that I can tell you my own personal experience. I went through this exact same kind of torture my senior year of college, and it absolutely breaks my heart to see high schoolers doing this to themselves. This is March, April of 2007, final semester of college, and after multiple years of quite severe health problems, I had scraped by with a 3.1 cumulative GPA. I think the cumulative GPA for my major, chemistry, was 2.8, 2.9. I had applied to 7 graduate chemistry programs. I was rejected by 6 and waitlisted at 1. And meanwhile, my classmates are getting acceptances from pretty much all of their schools, medical school, graduate school. I think we had 1 or 2 law and pharmacy students. Anyway, there was one day I remember very well. I overheard one of my classmates telling somebody from a different department, hey, with a chemistry degree from F&M, you can go pretty much anywhere you want. You can write your own acceptance anywhere. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh, that's nice. That's really nice. It didn't matter to me that I had been through hell with my health and couldn't realistically perform the way that my classmates were performing. It didn't matter. I still remember crying myself to sleep that night. And the reason why I'm telling you this is to say that this kind of comparison is crazy. There is absolutely no reason why high schoolers should have this toxicity in their heads. Yes, there are going to be high schoolers who show off their high and their perfect scores, but no, your high schooler never, ever needs to compare him or herself to those people. They should never have to feel as badly as I did that day. Please, please do yourself and your high schooler a huge favor and print this slide for prominent display in your home. It's a reminder that although the race is long, in the end, it is only with him or herself, and no one else's performance will matter. With that, I want to thank you all very, very much for your time this evening. I hope you learned a great many things. And before we open it up for questions, I just want to let you know, if you think of anything after the webcast is ended, you can reach me at prepwithselena@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me or my practice, you could go to www.prepwithselena.com. So again, I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out to spend some time with Jeff and me. And I hope that you are prepared to start turning stressful and terrifying into set for any test. Thank you very much.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna reclaim my my hosting abilities here.
Okay.
Am I? How do I do that?
Do you want me to pause or stop recording?
I got it. All right.
Okay.
I'm the host again. I'm in charge. Awesome. Okay. So first off, thank you, Selena. That was great. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm gonna start with one, and then for those of you folks who want to put something in the group chat, you can do that. And if you really want to speak, you can just raise your hand, and we'll answer that. So Robert has beat me to the punch. I had a question that was similar along these lines, but I'll answer Robert's. Robert writes, and Selena, can you see the chat, or I'll read it to you? It's okay if you can't.
Yeah, all I can see is those things that you send me.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so Robert asks, how different is the prep for each test? So, you have a student who's prepping for the ACT, you have a student who's prepping for the SAT. What are the key differences, would you say?
It's a great question. At a high level, obviously, you have the differences in the structure, but I like to dig a little bit deeper. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read the blog, but some of I would say the biggest difference that really makes an impact on the final decision that a student makes about which test to take is the balance of time crunch versus the amount of thought that each question requires. On the SAT, you're definitely going to have more time. You can move, I don't want to say at a leisurely pace, but you're not going to feel as squeezed for time. But on the flip side, the questions are definitely going to require more thought, and students tend to feel as though there are more tracked answers lurking about. Now, you contrast that to the ACT, where the questions are, yes, absolutely, they're more straightforward, but you will need to be on the move if you want to finish each of those sections.
Because there's less time on the ACT.
It's funny. The amount of time on the ACT is approximately the same as that of the SAT, but it's the number of questions per section. For example, on the SAT writing and language section, there are 44 questions and you have 35 minutes to answer them. But on the ACT, the equivalent section is the English section. You have 45 minutes to answer 75 questions. So
Awesome.
very significant difference there.
So Robert, to follow up, part of that question was, and this is a good question, because I always, as a college counselor, whether it be my private practice or at my school, we tell kids, or I do, to take the exams, the practice exams, both of them, and then get a feel for which one's best for you. And, depending on that, depending on your scores, depending on how you feel, you attack the one that you feel like you're going to do the best on. What if you take the ACT and the SAT prep, like you take just a practice exam for both, and your scores are essentially identical? How do you know which one to go after?
It's a great question. This is where your high schoolers' feelings on them will definitely come into play. I have a couple of students like that right now who they really can't tell which one is the better fit. So I asked them, okay, which one do you feel you're going to be more able to improve? Do you want to improve do you feel you're going to be able to improve your speed more? Or do you want to better work on your ability to really think through the questions? And I also look at a couple of smaller things. So for example, are you stronger in math? If you are, it's important to keep in mind that the ACT is only a quarter math, whereas it's going to be half of your score on the SAT. You may also consider the essay component. The essay tasks on the two tests are very, very different. General consensus among my students, and I agree with this as well, is that the ACT essay component is less challenging, because on the ACT, you are tasked with writing a persuasive essay on the topic, but on the SAT, it's a little bit different. You're presented with a prompt that is persuasive in nature, but your task is analytical. So what you have to do is write an analytical essay on how the author of the prompt constructs his argument. It's very different.
Right. And another question, which kind of segues from what you were talking about, was, and this is, this question I get all the time, but essentially the question is, should we bother doing the essay on either of them? Very few schools at this point require the essay for the SAT or the ACT. What I've been advising, and you can tell me if I've been advising correctly, or what your thoughts are, is if you were even considering a school that might be a super selective school, you should be taking the essay on both exams. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. Yes. Like if
the idea is that you don't want to be caught later on. Oh shoot! I never took the essay in the school I really want to go to or apply to. It requires it, right?
Exactly. You'll have to take a full-blown SAT or ACT so you can capture that.
Can you talk really quickly about the new changes that the ACT has coming?
Sure. Starting in September 2020, the ACT is going to allow students to essentially, they're going to allow a couple of different things. They're going to allow students the option to test on a computer or to test on paper. And in addition, what students are really excited about is the ACT will allow students to retest individual sections. This is going to be a huge boon for students, particularly students who struggle either on one individual section, but I think it's going to be especially beneficial for students who run out of steam toward the end of the test. Science is the one that gets them.
Yeah, and this is a huge change for the ACT. I mean, for years, the SATs allowed you to super score, right, which allows you to kind of get your best section and kind of, if you took the test 3 times or whatever, twice, obviously, and you got a better score one section one time and then a better score on a different section the next time, you put them together and you get your super score. The ACT scores that schools did not super score as much. Some schools did, but basically you were kind of forced to retake the ACT to try to get your score better. And now you're going to be, if you did really, really well in certain sections, but not as well in other sections, now you can kind of pick and choose which sections you want to retake. And that's a big change for the ACT. And I think it's super important
Yes.
for
Yeah.
students with text anxiety, students who may benefit from extended time, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. To date, I haven't heard anything about College Board doing anything similar. So we'll just have to wait and see how they respond.
Now they respond, and usually the way those two companies work is one company does one thing, and the ACT or the SAT, they react to the other company. So I'm sure the SAT has some up their sleeve also. So another question is subject tests. Fewer schools are requiring, that's totally true. Again, I would answer this question the same way. If you're a student who's planning to apply to a selective school, I would plan on taking subject tests. And what I would take is subject tests and subjects that you're really feeling really strongly about, like you feel really good, and you take them directly after that class is over. So for instance, if you're really great at world history, I would take the subject test in world history after your class is over in June. Any input on that, Selena?
I agree with that approach, yes, because otherwise you run the risk of losing some of that material. I find that happens a lot with students who haven't taken, say, geometry in a couple of years.
Yeah, and I would say that, again, we're only looking at about probably 100 schools that now require an SAT2, or I call it SAT2, subject test, same thing.
Yep.
There's another, maybe 100, 200 and change that recommend it, but it's not required, and that is a true recommend. It's not like that fake optional where, oh, the supplemental essay is optional. No, that's not optional. You have to write that. But for colleges that are recommending SAT2s, it's truly a recommend, and I would not send scores unless they were comparable to the scores you would send in your other academic avenues, whether it be your GPA or your SAT scores. But again, it goes back to the point, and this actually kind of goes back to your point about I need to know kind of which schools I'm looking to apply to before I kind of say what's a good score or how I'm attacking this SAT or ACT, because if you're a student who's applying to SUNY Albany and Ithaca, which are really great schools, but they're not MIT and Stanford, you're not going to have to worry about. But if you're thinking about, I'm going to apply to some of these more selective schools in the country, then yeah, you're probably going to want to start thinking about the SAT2s. All right, that's a pretty unique question. I'll answer that one later on my own. Robert, I'll get back to you on that one. It's a little bit. It's one for you. It sounds like on your own. I'll answer that offline. What else? We'll take a few more minutes here. It's 8:50, so we'll go for a little while longer if anybody has questions. If not, we'll wrap it up. What other things might people be curious about? And you have me on the line too, so if you want to segue a little bit towards college admissions, we can use that time here as well. I'm going to wait a moment. Okay. All right. So if we don't have any other questions, and as I'm finishing up my spiel here, you got another minute to write. We are going to, last question, I think. If you take both SAT and ACT to schools, consider both. So this is the analogy I always give. SAT is Coke, ACT is Pepsi, and colleges don't care which one you like better. So you can send your Coke score, you can send your Pepsi score, it doesn't matter. Colleges do not care which one you send. I don't want to get into like dissecting it, what that looks like, but the fact is, whatever score your student, your high schooler did better on is the one that you should send. If you want to send all the scores, it's fine. Colleges will dissect them at this point. So if a kid had, I don't know if you know the concordance chart off the top of your head, Selena. So if a kid had a 1300, what's that composite for the ACT?
I don't have it off the top of my head. If I had to say roughly, it's going to be mid to upper 20s.
Yeah, I was going to say 28, 29 probably. So if the kid got a 28 or so on the ACT and a 1300 on the SAT, those are about equal. If you're not sure, send them both. The only reason I wouldn't send them both is because it costs money. but that's something you really should talk to your counselor about. But either way, you know, you can send all the scores. If they're both kind of comparable, you can just choose one. It doesn't matter. But I think that, like I said, colleges do not care which one that you go for, and they don't care which one they get. Amy, hi Amy. Amy's got a question here. Amy, that one came to me. I'm going to forward that on to Selena. All right.
Okay.
I'll forward that question directly on to Selena. All right. So I think we're good. So what I was going to say is, we recorded this, and Selena, are you okay to share your deck with people?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'll send out an email to everybody in the next few days here, you know, probably, you know, before the weekend is here, with a follow-up with Selena's information and with the deck and with the recording of this webinar here. And if you have any questions, we're here to help. Shoot me an email, shoot Selena an email. We're so glad you guys took time out of your night to join us. Selena, this is great. I really appreciate it. I'm going to give you a buzz on your phone in a minute once I shut down here. Robert, I'll get back to you with your question. And Amy, I will forward your question on to Selena. All right? Selena, I'll talk to you soon in a little bit.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
You can stop recording, Selena.